Hello there, long time no see. Welcome back, YouTubers and Twitch people. I don't have a good name for you guys. Welcome to F1 2019. I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I didn't realise when I pre-ordered the game that I instinctually ordered the Legends Edition, which means I actually got early access and I missed yesterday because I didn't realise that's what I'd done. Apologies for my hypocrisy aside. The more astute of you may have noticed before we even begin that my steering wheel is not here, which was originally the plan. There are three good reasons for this. The first one is that the default setup on the wheel is garbage. It's really, really bad. I will talk some more about that once we kick things off. Secondly, my setup doesn't really allow for it at the moment because the clicking of the gear shift is going to drive you all completely mad. There's not much I can do about that right now, but I will work on a solution. And finally, I look a bit red, a bit pinky, and that's because all my curtains are closed because it is 38 degrees outside, Celsius for the Europeans among us. And that is far too hot for me to be working the wheel, to be honest, and to still be able to brain. What you're seeing here is I've just installed the game. I have had a quick dabble. Obviously that's how I know the wheel doesn't work so good, because while it's installing you can play the Australian Grand Prix. Now it's fully installed so we can get on with it, and the aim of today's first stream is to get the junior career part of career mode out of the way, and then if there's time later today I will stream round one. That's the hope. I have my Red Bull, and I'm going to hit the X button now, and I will shut up if there's a cinematic or anything because I haven't seen the intro to this game yet. It just didn't play. I pressed launch. What's it doing? I don't know what's going on. There we go. Now it's working. It is unbearably hot. Now that's something I wasn't expecting. It's immediately connecting to the internet. Not super great. That's cool though. Official F1 news. I like that. Events, leagues, F1 2018 Championship, mail. What's in the mailbox? Welcome to your inbox. Yeah, whatever. So, what I've been able to work out so far, if I press the options button, you get your super license, and obviously this is your record of everything you do in the game. As explaining here, that's mine. So it shows the date you joined, your attendance and safety ratings, so on. You can see I'm on placement because I haven't done any online races yet. I might do some later today to try and boost the old ratings there, but what I found is that particularly the safety score is kind of hard to keep up if other drivers around you are really bad. Now what I want to look at before we dive in is the customization options. Driver customization. So this is where we do the helmet, the suit and the gloves. Let's take a look here, because what I was hoping for, rather naively, was that we would have, oh god, there's premium helmets. Oh god, that's horrible. That is horrible. Well, anyway, before I waffle on about that too much, the first thing I notice is I think that's the helmet I would normally use, but it's been changed. Let's see if my regular helmet is back. Now, I have to say, first of all, I do quite like that there's more helmets available. That was always a bugbear of mine. What I've also hated is that they've never had your sponsor logos on, and given that there's sort of some coverage on the visor there, I'm wondering if that's actually something that happens. Right, it seems that the original selection of helmets has been basically reworked. I'm going to try and replicate my usual helmet. Let's see if I can do this right. This should be black. Let's see how well this works. Nice. This should be black. Now we're getting somewhere. And this should be orange. But like a dark orange. That's too dark. That's the wrong kind of orange. It's important to get this right. See, that doesn't look like my old helmet at all, actually. But, you know, we change with the times. Now, I'll get back onto what I was talking about at the start of the stream. I'm not using my wheel because I've actually been doing some testing this morning while the game is installing. It allows you to play... the Australian Grand Prix while it's installing, and what I found was, compared to between pad and wheel, and we're talking totally default setup, default wheel settings, I found the pad was 7.7 seconds faster, straight out of the box. That's no messing, nothing else. I then tried to figure out why this was, because I was taking the same lines, I was using the same braking points, but I noticed with the wheel, taking the same braking points and same line, I would understeer dramatically, really badly. When I tested this side by side, because you can actually have both devices plugged in at once, so you can do one lap with one lap with another, without having to reset anything. And what I noticed was that full brakes on the wheel is not the same as full brakes on the pad. Same goes with throttle, same goes with steering input, actually. So if I press the brake button down on the pad fully, and I fully depress the brakes on the wheel, you get totally different results. And it's particularly noticeable with the throttle, actually. There seems to be a little bit of a softening of the throttle. So if I put my foot down flat coming out of a corner, which obviously you should never do, but if the car's got the grip, if you're carrying enough speed through a corner, you can do it at some corners. If I completely floor the throttle, I'm sometimes a whole gear lower on automatic shifting between the wheel and the pad, which tells you immediately that you're just not accelerating to the same strength. I've tried tweaking with the saturation levels, but it hasn't really helped. And so that's the first thing that I found a little bit disappointing. What else I'm finding disappointing is these premium race suits. But this is multiplayer only, so I'm not too bothered about that. It was just the... It was really just the helmet I was worried about, because that will appear in our career mode, which we're going to begin right now. Let's see if there's anything else we should check before we dive in. I don't know what the badge is for. I very much dislike that it keeps reconnecting to online services and stuff. That's not cool. Again, premium badges. Obviously they're keen to cash in on quite a few things. Showroom is presumably for looking at cars. I'll tell you what we can do quickly. We'll take a quick look through the classic cars, see what we've got. Obviously, classic Team Lotus, staple of any F1 game, really. 1976 Ferrari 312 T2. I mean, the cars are pretty, don't get me wrong. I think the graphical improvements on the cars are pretty clear. McLaren M23D, again. A bit of a fan of this car, actually. Lotus 79, possibly the most iconic Formula 1 car ever, to my mind. Ferrari 312 T4. Some McLarens from the 80s and early 90s. 1990 Ferrari, a car I actually do quite like the look of as well. 91 McLaren MP46, again pretty iconic. The two most iconic Williams, obviously. The 92 and the 96. Then we have the 98 McLaren, completely dominant. 2003 BMW Williams. I do like that you get the BMW powered cars now, even though the livery is not historically accurate, but probably for good reason. The 2004 Ferrari, 2006 Renault, 2007 Ferrari, 2008 McLaren, the famous Jenson Button Championship winning Braun BGP 001. Sebastian Vettel's championship winning RB6, the 2010 McLaren, which I still think is a very handsome car, actually. I love the way the nose is on this car. and the 2010 Ferrari F10, which is included presumably just because they had an agreement with Ferrari, because I never rated this car particularly highly. We'll take a look at some of the F2 cars as well. They should all be here. Got the Carlin cars, ART, Dams, Russian Time, Prima Power Team, Charouz, which I believe is... Were they the... No, they weren't the Sauber Junior team. Campos, MP, Arden, and Trident. I'm a big fan of Trident, to be honest, so I'm happy F2's included. What I'm going to say honestly is that if F2 was optional, I probably wouldn't play it if I was playing this game solely for myself. And the reason for that is the same reason that I avoid the special classic events. That particularly once you're an adult and you're working full time, you don't have so much time to dedicate to your games. And I just want to get through my seasons. I want to play a full F1 career. And the more work they do on career mode, the more immersive they make it, the more they put the experience in your control, the more I enjoy it, and the less I want these distractions. I understand that F2 inclusion is appealing as a general marketing point, but it's not something I would play if I wasn't on stream. Obviously we've got the esports integration, multiplayer, including support for league racing, which I'm a big advocate for, and there we go, back to solo play. So we're going to dive into a new career. And I'm going to shut up now.
In 2019, you'll be invited to start your career by selecting a Formula 2 team. Driving for this team, you'll experience some key moments of a Formula 2 season, a thrill-packed racing championship in its own right, and the springboard to Formula 1. At the end of this feeder series, your choice of driver academy and your performance in F2 will determine the terms of the contracts offered by the teams as you embark upon your career in Formula 1 and begin to write your own chapter of motorsport history.
Okay, so I have obviously given the game away. I want to drive for Trident. I'm a big fan of Trident. I think it's a team with a lot of credibility. It's a very respectable team, and I think there's a good place to... Oh, you have to pick a driver academy. I like this. I like this very much. Interestingly, they don't have a Honda driving academy. It is a... Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, Renault or McLaren driver academy. I'm not going to start in a driver academy, and I'll explain why. But first we've got some setting up to do. I guess we'll do full qualifying, full length races with formation lap. And I'm going to put the difficulty back to where I was playing last year, which is 90. It's a bit lower than I play in solo play, but when I'm trying to talk, I have to make a lot of concessions. I don't think anybody wants to sit and watch me just in silence drive around, and there's a reason you don't see many people doing live gameplay streams of these games. Usually it's on YouTube and it's edited, or it's live league racing with a commentator. It actually takes quite a lot of brain power to make sense and talk and drive, and so things like manual gear shifting, things like that, I keep to myself. What's up, man? Good to see you. How are you doing? There you go. You can rewind and watch that later. Yeah, I thought it was about time the face cam came back out again. I'm doing okay, except it's super hot. Before you joined, I was explaining, for anyone who watches on replay, why I'm not using my wheel today. I'll go into that more actually once we start, but basically the wheel with the default settings feels like crap, and I wanted to get a stream out today because I'm travelling at the weekend. Anyway, we'll dive straight in, and I will talk through again some of my early experiences, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited to try the F2 mode, although again it's not something I'd necessarily play if I was playing this just for myself. Let's see, I'm sure there's going to be some tasty cinematics going on. Oh, these are the invented drivers, right? There's some invented drivers that can join the F1 grid. It's kind of a controversial decision for a lot of people, but I actually quite like that. I think it breaks your immersion a little bit when you're doing a 10-season career mode to see drivers at the back constantly and just not being dropped. So I think it's good. I understand why. It would be nice to see licensed F2 drivers coming in, I think, but maybe there's some kind of contractual issue with that.
Trident's new driver really commanding the race here. Devon Butler still ruthlessly giving chase. These two have been really scrapping it out for the early wins in the championship. And something's wrong. Butler sees his chance.
That's how I look at all the time. That's quite realistic.
Picking up speed again. It's unclear what the issue was. Can they still finish this race?
Looks like an issue with the turbo. You've lost some speed at the top end, but you're very close to the finish. You can still compete and get some points here. Don't give up. Just do the best you can. We're all behind you.
Oh, it's putting me straight in. So, first things I've noticed is that the cars are very understeery. Yeah, well, Lucas can fuck himself. That affects the pad less so than the wheel, having tried both while the game was installing.
Again, your teammate wants to pass you. I know you don't want to drop a position, but without your turbo, he's the best one to challenge for points further up the field.
Yeah, go on then, fair enough.
You could be denying the team points.
Fine, Jeff, fine.
That's great. Lucas could push on now. Okay, the gap behind is 1.5.
I wonder if I overtake him again, how the reaction will be.
Me to pass on his thanks. I know it's frustrating, but you made the right call for the team. Now we're all with you. Just bring it home as best you can.
Okay, now Jeff's no longer speaking. Let me get back into what I've noticed. So, the cars are a lot more understeery and the limits of grip are a lot less forgiving, particularly on the wheel. I found that even with quite generous braking distances, once I'd rotated the wheel about 30 to 45 degrees, already the car was no longer steering. It was just sort of almost like aquaplaning in a straight line. This seems to be an issue that's affecting a lot of people. I took a quick look around Twitter to see if anyone else was complaining of this. It seems to be quite a common complaint. And as I was saying at the start of the stream, there's also an issue with braking and the throttle between wheel and pad, because full braking on the wheel or full throttle on the wheel is not at the same level as full braking or throttle on the pad. So it's almost as if with the pedal flat to the floor, you're braking maybe 75% instead of 100%. And even tweaking with the saturation settings did not help. The cars are very, very squirrely. Not necessarily a problem. It actually makes them kind of fun to drive. The F2 cars feel lighter. I obviously haven't spent much time in the F1 cars, so it's kind of hard to provide a detailed comparison at this point, but already I can say the F2 cars feel a bit more like driving a roller skate, which I guess is how it should be. Some interesting customization notes as well for career mode. Aside from the wider range of helmets and race suits, which I do approve of. Yeah, I was going to say, Simon's boyfriend's behind me. I better let him through, or else I'll be getting told off. I don't know why he loves Markelov so much, I really don't. But you get asked when you create your driver about your preference for using the number 1. So you pick your race driver number as usual, and as we know, mine is 41. But you also get asked, do you want to use number 1 while you're the reigning champion, which I think is a nice. It's nice to have the option. This car handles just awfully. I will read your comment as soon as I'm on a straight, because this car is really fighting me. I guess it's on the default setup as well, and I'm notoriously bad with default setups. Okay, I think it's like that old piece of furniture at your grand's house. It's always been... It's true, he has been there a long time, hasn't he? The name's very, very familiar. What I find a little bit disappointing, and don't get me wrong, from what I've heard, the F2 part of the career mode is actually a lot of fun, and the storytelling is supposed to be reasonably good, if a bit Toker-esque. What I find a little disappointing though is for people who would like to do a full season, you can't do it as part of your career mode. They just cut it down to I was told 3 short races, which I thought meant full races, but apparently it means like a few laps in a scenario, and I guess that's just in case you're completely garbage, that they can still make it seem legitimate that you're promoted to Formula 1. Yeah, me too, man. I've heard a lot of people saying that the F2 cars are more fun to drive. I'll be interested to see which way the leagues go, because if we see a lot of F2 leagues popping up, I think that will be quite telling, because particularly people who sort of do league racing and sim races in general are a lot more discerning about what they want. I'm hearing a lot of conflicting things as well about career mode in general, because a lot of people are complaining that again, things like the Williams are too fast. There's some inconsistencies in driver AI behaviour.
Well done, good finish. You stepped up and achieved what we asked.
Yeah, also true. So we secured 6. I think that's the equivalent of the good ending, because we let our teammate through, but also retain position. I love that they've got the F2 commentators.
They were calm and steady when they needed to be, but they were ruthless and aggressive when it was demanded of them. There wasn't anything out there that they weren't prepared to have. Let's see if they can keep it up this season.
I need to fix my helmet.
And I can see our drivers making their way out now. It's been a sublime team performance, and it's the culmination of a lot of hard work. Dams are your winners today.
Nicely done. It's nice to see some different podium animations too. That was necessary.
It's a good result for Devon Butler, who moves further ahead.
Yes, I agree. They should have done. Ferrucci is a dickhole.
I think it's got to be Sean Galeon. He's not always spectacular, but he quietly gets the job done, and that's the case today.
On to the teams. The Dams move to the top of the table. After all this drama, you'll be mad not to join us for the next race. We hope to see you then.
Okay, so let's have a look at the standings. How have they set us up? So they put you up against your teammate for, I guess, second, but also you can make a run on Devon Butler. Yeah, it's a very contrived scenario. I mean, I guess if they were trying to condense it down, that kind of makes some sense, but god damn, it's hot. Alright, let's see what happens in the bad acting school. F1 drivers receive a lot of media attention. Okay, I like that they seem to be improving this, because I think they made some good steps last year with the press involvement. Let's see what the press say.
There you are.
Oh god, it's the Joker.
Exciting race. It definitely got people talking about you, which means I was able to secure a quick interview. Okay, we're all set over here. Just a minute. Remember, anything you say to the press can go very, very public.
Huh?
Be relaxed, but also be conscious of what you're saying and how it might come across to other people, okay?
Got your sugar tits.
Great.
Alright, sweetheart.
So Emma keeps telling me you're the one to watch this season.
You know it.
That's true, you'll be doing plenty of things. Just remember, be yourself. And the more you can give me, the better this will be. Right, stand here. Turn a little this way for me. Perfect.
Alright, I'll be careful.
An exciting race today. Let's get your perspective. So you and Lucas are new to the team. How are you settling in?
I'm going to be best buds with Lucas.
Okay, so how did you feel about being ordered to give up the position to Lucas?
I'm going to answer honestly here, it is the right decision. If I have a turbo issue,
Great.
fine.
Well, that's everything.
I'm a strong believer, actually, it's a team sport. Probably why I'd never be a champion in real life. But it is. Like, I hate driver orders where they should be racing, but if there's a technical issue involved, then I think team orders make perfect sense.
I know that wasn't easy left between us, but it was the right choice. It was good driving.
Yeah, that's how I describe it, mate. It's just good, not great. 1 in 6. 1 in 6 makes the leap to F1. The other 5 are still watching their less talented teammates collect all their points. Shame, really. A lot of great drivers never get their chance because they do it all for the team.
Those teams got us here.
Yeah, but it's the drivers that take the risk. We should get the rewards. You ever want to race in F1? That's how winners think.
And remind me, how many F1 races have you won?
Watch this space. At the end of this championship, I'll be the one lifting the trophy, and I won't use my teammates to nick the podium.
Okay, I'm out. You believe what you want, Devon, but it's still early days.
He's either very clever, or you're just a pusher.
Hey, fuck
Do you
you.
think if the situation was reversed, you'd do the same thing? You'll start looking out for yourself. No one else will.
Probably correct, though. I like that. I think that's a nice touch. I wish that extended into the F1 career mode, but I'm pretty sure they won't get real F1 drivers to waste time recording scripts. The interesting thing about that little interplay there was it's refreshing to see the German as the good guy and the British guy as the evil one. Like, they've obviously made a conscious effort to reverse the stereotypes. Even though he has the very smug and evil German voice. Alright, what's going on here? Yeah. Natural response.
Look at them go! Devon Butler locked in wheel-to-wheel racing with his championship rival, desperate to shut them down and stop them getting past.
Alright, so I have to get past him, I guess, without taking us both out.
Contact. Butler simply left them nowhere to go.
Oh.
There was just no way for them to have avoided that. And look, there's significant damage. Not sure if that was down to recklessness or sheer aggression.
Oh, I'm in Ferrucci's car
Are gonna have something to say
before he was fired.
Don't give up. You're still in this race.
Right then. It could be either, completely interchangeable. What I like is we can actually make failcast F1 cars, which I'm definitely going to be doing later.
Okay, the stewards have awarded Devon a penalty. Push on. You can still catch him. You can still beat him.
I'm not so sure about that actually, because I'm playing on a difficulty I found challenging last year, and I'm still not totally used to the cars, but let's see what we can do. I have to say, like, driving with the pad is putting a bit more of a smile on my face. The cars do feel... they do feel fun. I like the engine sounds as well, although I can't speak for how authentic they are, having never driven an F2 car, obviously. A lot of people were complaining about the sound design in this version of the game, actually, saying that the engine noise sounds, particularly for F1, have taken a step backwards, which kind of surprises me because...
Devon's P7 at the moment.
you would have to consciously go out and record new F1 sounds that were inferior and then make the decision to put them in the game. So whether that's just subjective, a subjective view or not, I don't know. What I don't like is that you're not given a chance to test and set up the car, because who knows how much faster it's possible to be. Then again, I suppose that's why it's like a difficulty benchmarking test, I suppose. They do, don't they? I mean, they're even better on PlayStation, not PlayStation, PC. But also, my aim in the next few months is to switch to a PlayStation Pro so I can stream in 1080p, and I should be able to take my save with me. So that would be good, because I'm keen to see how it looks, because I believe the game's optimised for PS4 Pro. And should look even more gorgeous. What I always take as the real test is Bahrain, because I think Bahrain is one of the best looking circuits during the race, at least, less so during practice and quali. Once it's all lit up and they've got the particle effects in the air. Yeah, PC is just staggeringly pretty. I mean, obviously it's very resource intensive, I'm told, particularly if you want to maintain a competitive frame rate. I'd definitely be playing it on PC if I had the money to replace my PC. That's something else that's on my list for this year. Now I'm getting back into YouTubing before they ban me for saying something I shouldn't, which is inevitably going to happen because it's happening to everybody. This is actually one of my favourite tracks. It's got kind of a go-karty quality to it, and it seems to suit this kind of car very well.
Devon is 3 places ahead of you right now.
Yeah, I heard that. The sad thing is, like, for years I resisted Google. I had a Windows phone, which I know is going to draw some eye rolls and mocking ire, but I had a Windows phone, which I was quite happy with, and I never liked Android, and I tried my best to stay out of the Google sphere, let's call it. But the problem is that, having been an Apple user for many years, I could no longer do it. The problem was they overcharge for everything. What you get for your money is not necessarily representing good value. Their customer service was appalling. They tried to charge me for everything. So in the end, I changed, and I'd been looking at getting some smart home stuff going. So I was on the verge of buying like a Google Nest Hub and starting to install some bits and bobs, but I can't do it anymore. I can't. Anyway, I should be talking about the game. So far, I mean, obviously this is what, my 5th lap in an F2 car. I definitely like them, and as I said at the outset, handling with a pad is so much better than it is with a wheel. I'm sure maybe, going back to the wheel for a moment, the issues with the throttle and braking and the steering, I'm pretty sure cannot be intentional. So I'm waiting to see actually if any patches are released. There's already supposed to be a patch released for an issue with delayed downshifting. So when you shift down, the game doesn't respond immediately, which obviously is not desirable. And you'd think that'd be something that would have been glaringly obvious before the game went live, but you never know how these things work, right? But the number of people complaining about it tells me it probably wasn't intentional. Unlike with, I think it was F1 2014, where they installed mechanics that allowed you to wear out your engine if you were too aggressive on the throttle. And everybody, including myself, was blowing their engine up after 3 laps. And we all thought that was a bug, but actually it was intentional, and we were just driving really badly. It didn't stop Codemasters patching it to make it a lot more forgiving, so much so, in fact, that I never blew up another engine again. But this issue with the wheel, I think, is so glaring that I don't think it can be totally intentional. And I was surprised that saturation didn't correct the issue, didn't even help, to be honest. And the way the car responds very, very unusually. The limit of grip seems much narrower with a wheel than it does with a pad. Also, that's the other thing, brakes are very spongy. Brakes are a lot spongier this year. Even with, I tried playing around with 100% brake pressure and large brakes, and yeah, it did not work for me. That was a bad line. I don't know if I'm going to get past these boys before we cross the line. Because obviously the target they're setting me is to get in front of Dickface. No, he's got me. I'm not going to make that time up. I'm also not going to cheese it and flashback. I'm going to try and be a much more graceful loser in this version of the game than perhaps I have historically.
Devon is 3 places ahead of you right now.
Yeah, I know, and he's going to stay there. I might just pip Russell. No, I won't. One more lap, that's all I needed. Apparently I still met my target. The target that was never communicated to me. But I guess failing that means I won't get any offers from the top teams. I still think they're a little bit generous with their contract offers in these games. Ah, he did get a 5-second penalty.
And I can see the Carlin team underneath our commentary box going crazy as their driver walks out. It was a great win. And it means a great
I do think the Carlin car has got a very nice livery. Right then, what happens next?
It's a good result for Devon Buckler, who moves further ahead at the top of the table. And now
It hasn't applied his penalty.
let me ask you, who is your driver of the day?
Oh, there's a lot of options.
It has not applied his penalty. Because if it had...
No one really jumps out at me.
Yeah, because those were the 2 guys in front of me. So he was the third car in that train.
Goodbye for now then, but we really are just getting started. Make sure you join us again.
Yeah.
Lights out.
So his penalty claim was bullshit. Never mind though, I got close and that's what matters. I did my best, and with the power of friendship, I'm sure we'll still make it into Formula 1.
Things didn't really go your way today. Let's have your take.
Oh, bite me.
It seems to me that collision with Devon clearly cost you a lot of time. Are you disappointed with the final result?
Well, I want to say it's outrageous, but I'll keep boosting the team.
So did you ever think you'd get the place back from Devon? I've seen that you and Lucas have been picking up a lot of points recently. What do you think of your championship chances?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep sucking up to the team. I think that's the way I have to go now. I've not exactly put my stamp on things with any authority. So I'm guessing now there'll be a contrived down to the wire scenario where I snatch the championship at the last minute.
Devon, stop. Not now, I'm busy. Hey,
What are you doing up? Seriously,
I'm gonna celebrate my excellent drive.
we saw what you did. It was reckless. You should have been black flagged.
And I wasn't, because it was my line. You were in my space. You shouldn't have been. Next time, stay out of my way.
No, someone could have been hurt.
And that didn't happen, so what's your problem?
My problem is that your actions out there are too dangerous.
Listen, contact happens, okay? My penalty, did focus, kept it smooth, and came out on top. That's racing. Quit driving and take the job.
Devin, you don't get it. It's not me you should be apologizing to.
Look, you grab your space on the track, and then it's all in the car. It's just how it goes. And anyway,
I know we're supposed to be hating Devon,
with my penalty.
but
No hard feelings, okay? Not from my end anyway. Chin up.
yeah. I know we're supposed to hate Devon, but I actually can't. I don't get that. He just seems a bit arrogant, but what he says is technically correct. And it's not personal. And I wonder if, rather than him being a de facto bad guy, it's most supposed to be two different racing ethoses. Yeah, I'm wondering now what contrived scenario they have to put us within reach of the championship.
We are in Abu Dhabi. Each and every event in the Formula 2 calendar has led us here.
Hate this circuit.
The final event of the championship, and one that promises to be a spectacle every bit as exciting as we might have hoped. Yas Island circuit is a 3.4.
I guess I'm doing the full race here, maybe.
Man-made Yas Island. In addition to the 21 corners, it features two very long straights. Now these will be the driver's main overtaking chances today into turn 8 and turn 11. Joining me for one last time here this year is Davide Valsecchi. Davide, I'm glad you're here because I think I'm going to need help processing all this. Surely this is as exciting as it gets.
Yeah, you're
Ooh,
right,
Simon.
It's the perfect finale. Two drivers, rivals of season, now going into the final race, tied on points. Both way out in front.
I would guess I was wrong about the helmet customization as well, because I don't have sponsor logos on the visor, and I really think they need to add that. Like, let you design the base helmet, but put your sponsor logos on it when you change teams.
Okay, this is it. Last race of the season. All you have to do is finish in the points ahead of Devon, and the next time we see each other, you'll be the F2 World Champion. No pressure then.
Called it.
Good luck.
Yeah, I agree. It is. Apparently I can set up my car now. I'm just going to take a default setup. And yeah, why would I stop if I don't have to? Yeah. Alright, looks like we're doing a full F2 race. I wonder how long they set it to. Oh, 22 laps, that's not too bad. That gives us a bit more chance to see what's going on. I tell you what, I'm really bad off the line in these games. Like, truly awful. Now, apparently the AI is more aggressive in F2. That's what I'm hearing a lot as well. Like, they leave you less room. It's supposed to symbolise or represent how they've got less racecraft experience. I think that's maybe doing them a little bit of a disservice. But that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, I agree. That's why I keep using the term contrived. I don't like how contrived it is. It just seems like bad design somehow, and a wasted opportunity even. Now I guess they couldn't put like multiple F2 seasons in. Oh shit. I guess they couldn't put multiple F2 seasons in because firstly that's not really the point of the game, but also you can't really extend the story mode through so many. But I think if they were going for the fully authentic feel, then you would make it so that you have to, you know, succeed in F2 before you graduate to Formula 1. But instead, they sort of contrive it so you automatically succeed in F2, and then you kind of. Okay, I'm flashing that back. This is exactly the kind of thing that I was noticing earlier when I was testing the game out. That you occasionally get these strange responses. So sometimes you get snap under an oversteer, but also sometimes your brakes just sort of stop working. Like I was full on the brakes there and still ran wide. even if you brake early. It's far more pronounced on the wheel, but it does still happen on the pad. But it's not into every corner. It seems to only be in the slowest corners coming from the fastest straights, and even if you're full on the brakes before the braking point, the car just sort of doesn't respond. It's very odd. I'm sure I'll adjust to it, because this is the same kind of problems I run into with every new version of this game, like adapting to the changes. And 2018 was a very hard game to learn to love, actually, and caused more DNFs in a failcast season than any other season we've had in the last, well, this will be our 10th season. Because at the start, you know, once we were learning the game, it just was a lot less forgiving than perhaps we'd been used to. And again, they've kind of taken that step towards a little less freedom in what you can and can't do and get away with it. Yeah, I was full on the brakes there and still went completely wide. So I just have to brake like, I don't know, 10, 20 metres before the brake marker to actually make it round some of these corners. Because you can see as well how much time you lose through that. Full brakes, full brakes, full brakes. Still not slowed down. Now also I've damaged my front wing, which is affecting my braking as well. Full brakes, 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 still moving. And this is the thing, because, you know, maybe you're supposed to pump the brakes, but that doesn't feel like it's going to yield any results either. So let's try that again, and I'll tell you when I start braking, okay? And full brakes. Just holding the brakes the whole time.
Devon is in P3.
Yeah, you're completely right. Right. Now let's see if I can't full brakes, and then still it feels like the car's on the edge of grip there. It's just very frustrating. Not because I think the brake marker should be anything other than a guide, because I don't think it should indicate the optimal braking point, but because it's so far removed from where you actually need to brake. Yeah, I agree. Maybe that's it, you know. Maybe it's because I'm braking and turning. But also I'm braking where the game would be telling a brand new player to brake. So again, braking, 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 braking. Still red. And ultimately, yeah, let's try that. Yeah, better, but that's not the problem corner, is it? We're coming up on that.
Devon is a couple of places up on you.
Right, lifting, braking, 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 braking. Like, what is that? One more time. Okay, going, going, going. Still on the throttle, lifting, braking, 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 braking. I don't know if it's a setup thing. Let's go back. Again. one more time. I'm going to try and perfect this because this is the time to practice it, and it's only going to be worse in Formula 1. That was a bit better. So definitely not turning the wheel on the braking helps. But it just makes you very late on the throttle. And apparently I'm allergic to track limits, but you know, that qualifies me for F1 these days.
We're leading our teammate by 3.4 seconds. Devon is a couple of places up on you.
You keep reminding me of that, Jeff. Doesn't make him any easier to catch. Yeah. I don't know, there's something about the handling that I just can't quite... I haven't quite turned the key to unlock yet in my tiny pigeon brain. But one thing's for sure, and I think it's probably for the best actually, is that the guide, the line guide, is wrong, or it has like a margin to it, which I think is ultimately a good thing. Yeah, I agree, particularly in France. I've started to really loathe that track with a passion. It just doesn't seem suited to F1. And also, it's a very hard track to watch. See, again, braking super early and just not making the corner. Joe, I might actually stop and put on some softer tyres. And change this front wing, because I think I'm probably losing more time through not having this wing than I am anything else. Well, let's see how we get on. I tell you what, I'm going to try driving as if it was raining, because I've always been quite good in the wet on these games, and it feels a bit like maybe that's going to yield some success. If I just treat it like it's raining, yeah, that actually works a little bit better. What that does though is fill me with a certain dread about how actual rain feels in this game. Yeah. Track limits are for losers again. Okay, it's going to take a while to get my eye in, but I think things are improving slowly, even though I was a little bit slower on that lap. It's almost like pushing is the wrong thing to do. It's weird, but I guess it's designed as well to sort of include an element of tyre management, because that's something I noticed as well. Like, I was a lot harder in my tyres in my practice than I have been in these games historically. Let's take a look actually where my tyres are at. Yeah, they're not going to last the full race, I don't think. So I am going to have to stop. I am being a bit too hard on them, but maybe they start to extend their lifespan a little bit now because I'm driving a bit more carefully, which does seem to be faster.
Devon is a couple of places up on you.
So my plan for today is to ideally stream through the first round of F1, and then I will stream again on Friday before I leave for Finland, and then it should be a failcast on Sunday. So I'm actually doing quite a lot, and I forgot to brake in the usual place. Yeah, that's what I was just doing the calculation in my head, mate. It would be about 70%, and normally I'd maybe think of risking it. However, I know from last year's game that but more than once Simon got a complete spontaneous puncture in the high 60s to 70% range, and that would really cheese me off if I ended up getting a puncture on the last lap. Damn it. Fastest lap for Devon. Feels a lot smoother now. I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. Riding the curbs is a lot more forgiving than the last version of the game, because the curbs really cost you a lot of time. And it made me think, actually, if that was something they put in to control for something that the simulation was lacking, maybe. You know what I mean? To sort of artificially generate a result. Because here, I have a lot more confidence on the curbs, at least in the F2 car, and I don't feel the car breaking away from me. Yeah, that braking point is still super wrong. Let's go back. So if I get my eye in, I might actually have a chance of making a run on the guys in front. Okay, so I'm kind of doing... it's kind of hard to explain what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm lifting off, but I'm also sort of two-stage braking. So I have an initial deceleration, come off the brakes, and then go back on again. And I'm just having to drive it as if it was F1 2018 in the rain. And then the car seems to respond a bit closer to what I think it should be doing. Now, if I was a total amateur, I feel the other, you know, I'd sort of just put this down to me not knowing what I'm doing, but I've played every Codemasters F1 game religiously, so I'm by no means totally incompetent, despite my best efforts, and it does definitely feel like something's just generally a bit off still. Alright, I wonder if I'm actually catching these guys now I'm getting my eye in.
Good job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far.
It's funny, isn't it, to be setting the fastest lap when you're purposefully driving slowly. I'm starting to get a bit more of a hang of balancing the throttle. Yeah, so yeah, that's fair enough. To be fair as well, most of my history in these games has been just me crashing.
Data shows the tyres are okay right now. We anticipate good levels of grip for the next few laps at least.
Okay, that still wasn't an ideal line, but it's getting better. Let's see what the tyre temps look like. Good, my tyres are actually cooling. Which is good, because I am being less aggressive, so that should help the rather dramatic wear problem it seemed we had at the start. However, this is a slower lap, as we can see. The car still doesn't want to slow down into that corner, but again, I'm putting part of this problem down to setup. But I think our chances of an F1 championship are slipping through our fingers. Yeah, the gap now is 5 seconds, so they're pulling away. It also feels like you spend most of the lap off throttle, which is somewhat counterintuitive. I mean, that was something that you started to be doing a lot more of in the last game. You know, you would be off the throttle quite a lot. By bollard. Bollards are for nerds. But it seems here, like, to actually carry pace through a corner, you are actually off throttle even more so than last year. Right, let's see if I can get the braking point right this time. So, lift at 200 board, and then hard braking. No, still nothing. So definitely there seems to be an element of sort of, I guess brake temperature maybe is playing a part, because I seem to only make the corner if I brake in stages. I brake once, lift off the brakes, let them cool a little bit, roll sort of 20 metres, 25 metres, and then brake again hard. But I think also I maybe shouldn't complain as much as I have done, because it is nice for a game to sort of credit you with the intelligence to learn from what you're feeling and experiencing, and then apply that knowledge to the game to sort of beat the challenge you've been set. I think that's definitely a... I don't like games that baby you too much, I think is what I'm trying to say in a very convoluted way. Right, how's that gap looking? Still getting bigger. Yeah, it is. I don't know where I'm losing all my time.
Gap to teammate behind is 6.6 seconds.
I'm going to try and be quiet now for a moment and see if concentrating can't help me improve my laps. Do you know what? I need to figure out how to put the brake and throttle indicator on the screen so you've got a better idea of what I'm actually doing to get round this track. I like as well actually that they've got a little gap in the Halo device. That actually does make it a lot easier to see what I'm doing. I think I can only get the throttle and brake chart up though by driving from a different viewpoint. I'm falling into the clutches of the cars behind. That corner's a little off camber actually, it makes it a little harder to... I don't think we necessarily do actually, Jeff. I think I might end up changing them, so maybe let me use them. I think Norris is going to get me. Lando's coming for me. Yeah, that braking technique works way better. So how's my tyre wear? Not so sexy, but could be worse. But I'm really not making any inroads. I'm really not making any inroads into the cars in front. And I think missing that element of my front wing is really causing me to lose quite a lot of time. Bollards are for nerds. Box this lap.
Okay, we can take you this lap.
Super softs.
Copy that. Super softs for next box.
Thanks for the top advice there, Beetlejuice. Appreciated. If only I'd thought of that. I mean, there I was thinking, if I just coast round, eventually they'll come to me. Well, at least we have a race on our hands now. Actually, part of me does think it'd be quite funny to come out last, finish last, and still go to F1.
Release.
Wow, pit stops take a long time in this game. I guess we'll find out. I can always restart the scenario.
No more scheduled pit stops.
Yeah, I should have pitted at the start of the race. This immediately feels better. Yeah, I bet that's what happens. I bet you that's what happens. That was a bit of a dodgy line. The car's a bit more responsive now with its front wing, so I'm going to have to relearn everything that I just spent the first 11 laps learning. Because the car actually turns now when I tell it to. And it does actually stop a bit better, but that could be the tyres more than the aero, I think. Yeah, it doesn't brake that good though, does it? I think eventually, if I just keep rerunning that corner, it will go into my brain. Jesus Christ, it's hot in here. I might actually, mate. I might. If you don't mind, I might, because I think I could actually.
Okay, this is it. Last race of the season.
He's a very judgmental guy. That's the problem.
Finishing the points ahead of Devon, and the next time we see each other, you'll be the F2 World Champion. No pressure then. Good luck.
Okay, so I have to run on the softs. Okay, and I'm going to go back to a balanced setup because I think I was suffering a bit for lack of downforce. Let's try that again. Okay, a bit of spin off the line.
Devon's in P4 at the moment.
Let's try and have a clean start, not lose my wing, and then I can fight my way back. I'm always bad at multiple overtakes, so it's actually quite good to run this again so I can get used to being around traffic with the new AI. And apparently the AI in F2, as I said before, is not as competent or clean as it is in F1, so it's good to have a trial run. you may notice that I'm being very scared about approaching the back of my teammate, and that's just because I don't trust the AI in these games at all not to brake earlier. Forgot to do my braking technique. Let's try that again. So I think I can go just a little. Yeah, that allows me to sort of get right. Ooh, that's the first time it's felt squirrely. But then again, I've not really been following other cars so closely, so that could be a reason why. Oh shit, I totally missed my braking point. I was looking down at the chat. Let's try that again. Oh, I'll tell you what I need to do. I need to get some... excuse me just one moment, but this is a good chance to check photo mode, actually. Because I need to get... let's try turning the contrast up a bit. Oh, that's very dark. Because I need a screen cap for the thumbnail. Let's try that. And let's take a quick look around, because actually I think the graphics are... Photo mode is brilliant, mate. Everyone should be using photo mode. It's genius. Plus, actually, you'd be surprised how good it is to look back on good races you've had, because a screenshot can actually remind you of what you were doing when it was taken. And particularly because it's the Failcast 10-year anniversary this year, I've got a lot of screenshots from like the early days when we were still doing it on PC, and you can see how different all the cars are and how the graphics have improved year on year. It's actually get a little bit nostalgic. Right, let's actually try and get through this event now, because I think we all want to see what the F1 season is like.
Devon is 3 places ahead of you right now.
Right, I have to go for the kill now with my teammate. No more fucking about. I do seem to need to brake earlier than all of the other cars though. I'm noticing that. Do you know, we've spoken about doing exactly that every time. I actually bought Grand Prix 4 so we could do that. And we were going to do a fantasy F1 league at one point. Because it's funny actually, we've actually lost viewers over the years rather than gained them. Our 2014 season we actually had quite good viewing figures, and we were going to do a Grand Prix 4 season with customised drivers and teams, and make it like a collaborative F1 manager game, but the time investment to get it done turned out to be absolutely vast. I'd still like to do it at some point, but I think I'd need to be retired, basically. Right, drafting behind him, drafting behind him. Can I get by? I'm not going to get round by crashing into people, but it's so difficult with the way the braking behaves. Okay, that's one. Yeah, that's something we have been talking about. I mean, the thing is as well, it's not really for everyone, and the problem we have is sorry, now I'm talking, it's hard to concentrate. The problem we have is that when we initially started, we've actually been doing it more than 10 years, because we initially started something called the Betacast back in 2008, and that was just about video games. And the Failcast started by accident because we're just both big F1 fans, and we decided. And initially, it didn't have a name. It was a video games podcast. It wasn't actually about. It was like a let's play almost. It wasn't about Formula One. But then we started picking up viewers, and then all of them started saying, "Well, we prefer it actually when you talk about real F1 rather than what's going on in your game." So, as we were both passionate about F1, we thought, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then it really picked up steam around 2013, 2014, and then we started to have problems because we're not in the same country, and we never had computers of similar power at the same time. So there used to be problems where the speed of your car was in some way linked to how many FPS you got, and so we'd have these co-op races where cars would jump between two different positions. The game couldn't decide where AI cars were. They meant that whoever had the faster frame rate had an inbuilt advantage that was insurmountable, basically. There was no way we could race each other fairly. It just wasn't going to happen. And so really we couldn't get the show from a racing standpoint good until we were both on PS4. Then once we got that, we'd already lost a lot of the viewers, and people seem to prefer shorter, punchier, bite-sized career mode videos now than they do long-form podcasts. But I mean, it's a passion thing for us. We'd do it even if no one watched. Never, Jeff, never. We do it no matter what, I think, because it's as much a chance for us to socialise as anything else. I deserved that penalty, but honestly, the car was completely locked up. I had nowhere to go. But I think you're right. The difficulty we've always had as well is there's a reason that people don't tend to present and drive live at the same time, and most of the YouTube content for these games is pre-recorded with a voiceover, and that's because it's actually quite hard to drive competitively, as you can see, and talk coherently. And we've always sort of mitigated that on the Failcast by driving with driver aids. I'm sorry, I keep fucking up this corner. We're never going to get out of F2. We're in F2 purgatory. Let me focus. By driving with driver aids and turning the AI down by sort of 5 to 10 percentage points. And we found that was just about enough for us to race each other. Have races where we were able to compete with the AI and actually present, but then you still get the annual anomalies, right? Like particularly Monaco. That requires concentration to drive well, and so does hosting a podcast. So I think occasionally our episodes suffer from the fact that we're also trying to drive. And I have often wondered whether we'd be better splitting it between like a co-op let's play and doing a separate podcast where we could actually do both things better. But the thing is, whenever I'm streaming a game or recording for YouTube or anything, I feel like I have an obligation to add value to what I'm doing. I don't get these channels where people just play games and are silent the whole way through, or don't really say anything of substance. I think, if you're going to put yourself out there, you should be saying something worthy of people taking interest in listening to. But maybe I'm just old. Maybe I'm old. I grew up in a time where there was like 3 TV channels, and so what had to be on had to have some value. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've heard, and I always take it. I'm always very flattered when people think the analysis is worth listening to, and I think maybe a move to a we can still do it as a vodcast, I think, but maybe just have it over webcam. Everyone's going to shut the door on me. I've just gone on to the moon there. Yeah, I think there's a place for that. That's what we've always kind of flattered ourselves with. It's good to get feedback from someone who actually watches us, to be honest. Because we also have a tendency to be very overcritical, and particularly the stuff I do on my own, I've always watched back. Oh, sorry, my TV is asking me if I want it to turn off, and the answer is no. I hate that it does that. I always watch back stuff that I've done and immediately start picking it apart, particularly with the acting I've done, which a lot of people don't know about, but I've done sort of web TV series before now, and those things, they're not actually online anymore, because they were made for a bigger project, and in the end I said, I think we need to take them down, just because I'd watch myself and cringe a little bit, and I don't get that cringy feeling with the failcasts at all, but occasionally I listen to them back, and we have good episodes where it feels like a podcast and I can't even tell that I'm driving at the same time, and then there's other more complicated events, or where we're racing each other directly, where the podcast element just goes to shit, and I think it makes both things suffer a little bit. But we've always done it because it's fun. I mean, it genuinely is the highlight of my fortnight, as sad as that sounds, because I get to talk about a sport that I genuinely love, playing a game that I genuinely love, with a very, very good personal friend. And I don't think you can ask for more than that. And the advantage Simon and I have is that neither of us wants to do any of this stuff professionally, and it allows you to be a lot more genuine, because you don't have to worry about what you're saying. Sorry. You don't have to worry about what you're saying, for one thing. But secondly, I think it's a lot easier to... I feel a lot more comfortable where I don't have to do e-begging. We've always had a rule that we don't beg for subscribers or likes, and we certainly don't beg for money, because we'd be doing this stuff anyway, and I think that's the beauty of it. That's makes it a lot more fulfilling to do as well, where you're just doing something fun and other people come along and you can have a good conversation about a sport that you all love. Was that Devon I overtaked? That's about time. Eat it, Devon. Anyway, I suppose that's enough self-congratulatory back-patting there. What I'm finding as I'm going round is that my view on this game is changing lap on lap, and I'm actually starting to enjoy it more and more now I've got my eye in, and I suppose that's natural, and I think people who play racing games are a little bit more competitive minded anyway, because I think you have to be. People who don't get racing and just think of it as driving round and round in circles, which, you know, particularly in the case of IndyCar, it quite literally is. I think people don't understand where the satisfaction comes from for having a perfect lap or whatever. It can seem to some people a little bit psychotic. There's people who think it's genuinely psychotic to take satisfaction from shaving a fraction of a second off your lap time, but I think it's one of those things that you either love or you don't. It's kind of a thing that we're seeing more and more often, actually, that suddenly everything has to be for everyone. And I've never believed that. Like, I don't think it's right to exclude people from a hobby for arbitrary reasons, but if the hobby is just something people don't like, I don't think it needs to be changed to accommodate people. And I've always been fine with people not getting why I love the F1 games or watching the racing. And I think it makes it a lot more enjoyable to connect with other people who like it. That's the thing I enjoyed most about doing the Grand Prix World playthrough as well, because it was full of retro F1 fans, so when I sit there gushing over how much I love Pedro Diniz, people got what I was talking about. I'm sure you already follow him, actually. But Sean Bull, the guy who does the F1 livery concept, what I've been really enjoying is his reimagined retro team liveries. So he's taking teams from the past and modernised their livery and put it on a 2018 car model, and there's been some really beautiful designs that have made me miss Tyrrell even more than I already did. I think it's especially easy to understand people not getting it when you look at how this season's been, because this season has made it very hard to defend Formula One, I found. Because, you know, while I don't want to take anything at all away from Mercedes, I think they're doing a stellar job, and that's really what all the teams should be aiming to do, you know, the very best that they can. The season has been the one I found easiest to tune out of. Oh shit, I don't know what I did there. No, I agree, it's not Mercedes' fault, but don't you think, given how exciting the pre-season was, given like the interesting driver moves that we had, and the Red Bull changing to Honda, and I think the season held a lot of promise, and it's just not delivered on the potential, I think, for excitement and, you know, changing things up. Again, I don't think that's enough to write off the sport. Like, a lot of people are completely writing off F1 now as in need of a dire overcorrection, and it tends to be an overcorrection, don't you find? Yeah, also true, it does leave room for the imagination. But do you remember a few years ago where we had, I think it was 8 winners from 8 different races, and people at that point were still decrying, you know, things being wrong with the formula, and I was thinking, for the love of God, don't change it. Yeah, to be honest, you know as well as anybody, I think, that I've never been the biggest Lewis Hamilton fan, but, you know, by God do I respect him, and I think, you know, he's got this ability to just dig out a little bit more than people around him, which is often the deciding factor on who becomes a champion. What makes F1 particularly boring at the moment is that he's got that extra little bit inside himself, plus an ingrained advantage over his teammate and over his rivals in other cars, because Mercedes seem to have figured out whatever problem they had last year that made their car a little bit temperamental. And, you know, that was kind of a godsend, I think, because we needed Mercedes to push the envelope so much that a misstep kind of naturally followed. Because, I mean, that's how it should be, right? If you're on the limit of development, it should be that you go over the edge occasionally. Yeah, I agree. And I don't want this to reflect as me not rating Bottas, because I do greatly rate Bottas. Sorry, I'm going to have to flash back. I completely missed my breaking point again. I rate Bottas really highly, actually. I loved him at Williams, and I saw a Hakkinen trajectory for him, actually, that he would sort of meh, and then suddenly it all clicked for him towards, you know, the latter stage of his career. And I still think he's on that trajectory. I mean, as much as I rate Ocon, and I know there's drivers banging on the door who are exciting right now, I don't think it's a clear-cut argument that it's right to get rid of Bottas right now, because I think he's doing enough. You're a naughty boy, Albon, hitting me like that. That was very, very uncalled for.
Devon's currently in 6th place, P6.
Well, to be honest, but if you look at Hakkinen's early career, particularly McLaren Peugeot, Hakkinen wasn't in Hakkinen League for a long time, and I mean, how many years did it take Hakkinen to win his first race? It was like half a decade. And I think Bottas has a lot of the same qualities. It's just that his form has been too mercurial. He's either on it or he's not, and that's not something that you really saw with Hakkinen. And Hakkinen, particularly, you know, once McLaren were in the ascendancy, showed this continual ability to outdrive even himself. And to my mind, I mean, as much as I agree with you about Prost Senna, I think Hakkinen and Schumacher is also a totally iconic rivalry for me, because such different characters and mindsets with some common qualities between them, and I think they made qualifying sessions very, very watchable. I used to love watching those guys just beat each other by fractions of a second throughout a session. I kind of miss those 1 hour sessions, actually. 1 hour, 12 laps. I think that was a very good format. Yeah, I think that's maybe what I'm thinking of. Sorry, I didn't see your comment before then, but yeah, I agree. God, what am I doing? What am I doing? It's so hot today, guys. It's like, it feels, according to my thermometer, it's about 41 degrees in here. I'm not built for that. I was born and raised on a rainy, windswept island in the Atlantic, and this is an inhuman temperature to try and brain at. It's just not natural. It should be illegal to be this warm. That's my take. But I don't know, I mean, maybe you would think Panis is a more accurate description then? Because if you remember Panis in 97, he showed he had capability, but it was very rare he had a car under him that allowed him to consistently deliver. I mean, Bottas I find a little bit harder to read, because I don't think it's totally clear cut where he excels and where he fails. It just, he shows these flashes of brilliance. It just occasionally something comes up from within him and he pulls a move. Or Trulli, actually, yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to cede to your wisdom on this one, because I agree with you. Trulli is an excellent comparison. My driving's going to shit now. Because yeah, Trulli was completely up and down, as I recall. And then yeah, it had that ability to qualify well, and then it just completely went off in the race, coining the infamous Trulli train phrase. Oh, you've mentioned Fisichella now, and now you're playing my heart like a balalaika. Giancarlo Fisichella was one of my favourite drivers when he was driving, and I was heartbroken to see him not totally maximise his abilities when he went to Ferrari, because that was like a dream come true for me. Him outdriving the Force India so comprehensively, and then being picked up by Ferrari, that was like a fairy tale for me, and I so wanted him to excel at Ferrari the way he excelled at Force India. But I guess it's not unreasonable to expect that he would struggle. But I so wanted him to succeed. I mean, obviously he was a solid replacement for Badoa, so I'm not going to say like his time at Ferrari was a total waste, but by God, I wanted him to do well. Yeah, also true. Also very true. I think it's very hard to be an Italian and drive for Ferrari. Like, the weight of expectation is just going to be completely vast. And it makes me wonder if Giovinazzi ever gets there, and I'm not entirely convinced yet that he will. But if he ever did, I'm sort of wondering if he's truly mentally prepared for that. Right, I need to start finding some pace again, because I was catching Russell before and now my driving's gone to shit. Let's see if I can't get things back on track. Yeah, I had high hopes for him too, and a lot of people sort of wrote him off after that stint he had at Sauber, where he had a really strong Australian Grand Prix and then totally ballsed up in Malaysia. But I think people were very unfair in judging him based solely off that. Yeah, I concur. I mean, it's not like Leclerc didn't make any slip-ups, but I think Leclerc's strength was actually that the modesty and ability to proportionally self-reflect that gives him an edge, actually. You know, he's not got that arrogance that a lot of prodigious young drivers have, that makes them come in thinking they're God's gift to racing. And I think that's why we're seeing him adjust to Formula One much quicker than Verstappen did. I mean, Verstappen obviously can set the timing screens alight, and he can perform overtakes that make the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, but Leclerc is the one that's bringing home the points, and can also have those moments too. And I think Leclerc has done one thing for me that I think is totally invaluable, and that is he has shown the value of having more level-headed young drivers coming into the sport rather than just the ones who are lightning fast. Yeah, I mean, Giovinazzi is also modest, but he's I don't think he has the raw talent of Leclerc. And while Leclerc did also struggle at Sauber, you'll probably remember in the first few rounds he was spinning it quite a bit. I've not seen Giovinazzi sort of, at least in the race situations, I've not seen him really applying what he's learned and improving. He had a good qualifying session in France, of course, but it all went... Oh yeah, Max Verstappen is having an outstanding season, and back when he joined the sport, like 2015, 2016, on the old Failcast, the ones that we didn't do live, we were getting a lot of crap from people actually for not being on the Verstappen fan train, because Simon and I were always big advocates of Sainz, because during their first season together they were the closest matched teammates in Formula One, and the performance differential across the length of a season between them was so small as to be almost non-existent. On top of that, Sainz had a bit of bad luck that was out of his control. And what bothered us was that Sainz was getting no credit for the level of driving that he was doing. And that Verstappen... People think that we just inherently hated Verstappen. Now, I was a big Jos Verstappen fan back in the day. Arrows was my favourite team, and Jos and Arrows to me was like a marriage made in heaven. I was so excited for Jos Verstappen's son to come into the sport, right? But I wasn't prepared to be a blind fanboy, and I'm not for any driver or team. And the reason we were so harsh on Verstappen was because he had the talent and the potential, and he was throwing it away through arrogance. And it's better for him to have some short, sharp shocks at the start of his career to get his mind in the right place than it is for him to be promoted too soon and have his career fall apart. I mean, that's what happened to Kvyat, right? Kvyat cracked under the pressure. I mean, obviously Kvyat wasn't putting in the sort of stellar performances that we saw from Verstappen, but Kvyat had a very strong showing at Toro Rosso. He had that sort of Danny Rick quality of staying calm under pressure while he was at Toro Rosso, but then once he got to Red Bull and was totally under the spotlight, it was just a downward spiral, despite some very good results actually. He also suffered from not getting credit for those good results. I remember distinctly him scoring a podium and Helmut Marko just completely blanking him in the post-race. It was like almost as if he was saying, yeah, but it's not a win though. Even when he outdrove Danny Rick, he didn't seem to get credit for it, and eventually he just sort of collapsed. Now, I think Verstappen is a bit more resilient, but that wasn't really the crux of the criticism. The criticism was more that you have a once-in-a-generation talent, and we were saying that even then. He is potentially a once-in-a-generation talent, although we have also been blessed with Leclerc. So, you know, maybe not, but all he needed to do was keep a cool head and his talent would shine through. But he was so arrogant and so impatient. It was his impatience that bothered us more than anything else. Like his unwillingness to yield to team orders even when it made sense, his brash overtaking style.
Managing your tyres. Manage your tyres.
Actually, yeah, I haven't checked my tyres. Oh, they'll last.
The car behind us is lapping faster than us by around 1 second per lap.
Yeah, I know, my pace is completely gone because I'm not paying attention to my driving. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they spent the time looking for the next Vettel, and it seems Ferrari are in the same position now. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Do you think we'll see Kvyat back in Red Bull this year? Because I'm definitely getting that feeling. They said at the start of the year that they were definitely going to let Gasly see out the season, but I think that has all the hallmarks of a lie, based on what I'm hearing and what the press are reporting rumours of, and the sort of... I don't know, Red Bull are actually a team that are quite easy to read, I find, because they seem to spend more time under the pre and post race spotlight. Whether they're more forgiving about cameras in their garage, I don't know, but you see a lot of Adrian Newey, Helmut Marko and Christian Horner in pre-race build-up and post-race and during the race. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing I do like about Christian Horner, that his personality really shines through, and it's very easy to see what he really means. I agree with you. I think he does want Albon, but I think Kvyat is a smart choice. And I say that only because Red Bull is a very high pressure environment, and Albon has been one of the surprises of the season for me. I've really been impressed by him. When I first saw that he got the seat, I honestly thought he was going to be a Brendan Hartley kind of stopgap. That's not out of any disrespect for Albon, it's just I couldn't see it going any other way, particularly the way they're really pushing Dan Ticktum. It sort of felt like, well, whatever you do, it's Ticktum that's going to ultimately be the next golden child. But that was before we thought Gasly was going to be so far off Verstappen's pace. I actually find Toto a little harder to read, if I'm honest with you. He's very verbal and he gesticulates quite a lot, but I sort of don't get a feeling like I totally get what he's saying behind what he's saying, in the same way that I do with Christian. And it's also, I think, because Red Bull as a corporate entity are a little bit more predictable than a lot of the other teams, because it's clearly a marketing exercise for them, and they are highly mercenary. They have no loyalty to their drivers at all. At least not long-term loyalty. I should rephrase that. They have no long-term loyalty. Can you imagine the state of F1 though if it was still Vettel and Ricciardo there? Like, how many careers would Toro Rosso have killed if I'm a bit of a Toto fan myself, but I'm just finding it hard to have any love for Mercedes. As we said before, I don't blame them for being successful, but I have come to resent seeing them on the top step all the time. And again, I feel bad saying that. It's through no fault of their own, but I find it hard to have any love for Mercedes. But it's not just Mercedes, to be honest. I've always been like that. Simon's the same as well. I've always been about the plucky midfielders and the underdogs. So my allegiances tend to change a little bit. Although Sauber have been my favourite team, hands down, for well, since we lost Arrows, really. I have to say that this year I came into it determined to love Williams because they were the last true independent team on the grid for me, and I've ended up really becoming more of a McLaren fan. Yeah, that's what I was just considering. Where would they have gone after Fernando? I mean, who would have partnered Raikkonen? It's a very interesting question. It makes me wonder if they could have prized Lewis away. Out of those two, I think it would have been Perez. And the reason I say that is because for a few years now, there's been rumours that Perez had sort of a nod and a wink agreement to go to Ferrari potentially. And so did Romain Grosjean, because that's why he ended up at Haas. And that was on the back, of course, of his strong run at Lotus, where he looked like he had really turned a corner and was going to become one of the big stable names. And he did actually go on to become a stable name in Formula 1 because he's been around forever now, but I don't think anybody today would with a straight face link him to Ferrari, whereas Perez is kind of a different story. As we said on the Failcast yesterday, I do get the feeling that if Vettel were to step down, that Perez would be the one who got the drive, actually. I don't see Ferrari going after Verstappen, and I don't know why. Like, I wish I could logically quantify that for you. I think Mercedes want Verstappen, but I don't get the feeling that I'm excited for this now. I'm waiting on bated breath here, because I would have said, yeah, that's a good point. See, the thing was, when he first moved to Haas, he was driving at a level that made me say, do you know what? Give him the right car, and I think he could be a solid Ferrari driver. And I actually saw his career on that trajectory. Today, I can't actually see past Hülkenberg or Perez for that Ferrari seat of the current drivers. Because even if they were willing to prize Danny Rick away from Renault, I'm not entirely convinced he'd go. And I know that sounds odd, but I don't know. He seems to be at peace with his decision somehow. When you see him in interviews, he still seems to be relaxed, and we know he can get quite intense when he's not happy. But also, Hülkenberg's done a very good job of making Renault his home. I'd love to see Ricciardo in the red car. I'd also love to see Hülkenberg in the red car. I'm a long-time Nico Hülkenberg fan. But I can't get over the feeling that Hülkenberg's going to go through his whole career without ever getting a shot at the title. He may actually complete his career never being on the podium, because I think no, maybe not. Maybe not. You make a fair point, but I always make a point to judge drivers over a period of seasons rather than like a short run of form. And Hülkenberg's been someone who fairly consistently has outdriven midfield cars, and it's the same of Perez. But as we know from Simon and I constantly referencing Heinz-Harald Frentzen, there are some drivers who just flourish in the midfield and wilt under the spotlight of a top level drive. And I do wonder if Hülkenberg and Perez fall into that category, because Perez didn't exactly cover himself in glory at McLaren. But also, I think Perez was a bit young for McLaren at the time, whereas I think the Perez we see today would actually probably flourish in a top-tier drive, because he's got that right balance, I think, of experience and racecraft with the raw pace that he still sort of has. That's quite a controversial statement you've made there, mate. Perez has been impressing me in his Force India run. He really has. I'm going to make a bold prediction now. I think it's entirely possible that Ricciardo doesn't manage to win a title before he's out of the sport. And I think that will be entirely down to being in the wrong car at the wrong time. I just get that feeling from him. And, you know, I've got like a Columbo kind of hunch going on. Because the move to Renault was kind of a make or break thing. Because either it would prove to be a masterstroke or it would set his career back irredeemably. And I think I genuinely worry it's the latter. I think the formula change will be the true acid test for that. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm tired now of always making the case for Renault because, you know, as I keep saying, historical precedent says they will come good. They always come good. But I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to. I'm not at all convinced. They just don't seem to be able to get on top of the problems that they've had throughout this this powertrain formula, at least. And it's very odd because McLaren seem to be getting a handle on it with the same powertrain, so it's not just an engine problem anymore. Yeah, I mean, I think we had to give Renault a bit of leeway, but this season was the season they really had to show they turned the corner, because, you know, it took a long time to re-establish the team after years of cuts and budgetary problems, and they had to change a lot of the staff, and they had to restaff and grow the team again, and they had to replace a lot of the facilities, and, you know, it takes time to deliver. But I think they could pull out of the sport again before this investment even begins to deliver. Now, you know, the powers that be at the top of Renault are less Formula One positive, and the team don't seem to be getting a handle on even basic problems. I mean, not to the level that we see Haas struggling, but
We're not optimistic about them lasting much longer.
they feel horrible, Jeff, if that's any consolation. Okay, 2 laps to go. I'm going to finish this race, and then I am going to take a streaming break to drink an icy drink, because I'm getting a little lightheaded from all the heat. A cold shower maybe, and I will probably do practice 1 off camera to sort of tweak my my setup. And then I shall be back, and we'll do qualifying in the race live, I think. Haas is due to incompetence, Renault due to ineptitude. Very few people know the distinction between those, and I'm ecstatic that you do, because people think those are totally interchangeable terms, but no. No, I agree. I will say this: I feel a little bad for Haas, because it is humiliating to be buying most of your car off the shelf and then be putting out update packages that take your car backwards. And I particularly feel sorry for Kevin Magnussen, because I think he's been doing a really good job at Haas, and he's been making all the right moves politically as well as on the track. And now, despite his best efforts and him pushing the team to take that next step, the car just seems to be going backwards, and I think they can only blame Pirelli and the tyres so long. And I think this update kind of proves that it's not a Pirelli issue. I mean, it's a controlled tyre. You can't say the tyre is biased against you, because everyone's driving with the same tyre. Speaking of tyres, mine have really gone off, and it's hard to keep my It's hard to keep my pace. It's nice of him to nudge me. I was hoping the AI would stop doing that. That's something that arose in the AI in 2016, where if you look at the replay,
You can win that place back.
cars would hit you when you're both driving in a straight line, which means it's deliberate. And they would not be penalised for it. And it would always be sort of a tap on the rear of the car. And the other thing you tend to notice, actually, with these collisions is that the AI are not affected by collisions in the same way you are as a driver. Their cars are a bit more on rails. Forget about Lando. Yeah, I agree. I should have done, but I was bitter and resentful. But I may not be able to hold on to this podium position because the car feels awful on these tyres now. It's very, very squirrely and not stopping, not accelerating. I guess everyone has the same problem. I must have lost like a quarter of my body weight in sweat now. It's totally gross. I'm sat in a pool. I'm excited to see Simon's stream of this on Friday, actually, because I'm curious about what he does differently. I guess he's going to partner his boyfriend, but maybe not. We'll see. But also, he and I have very different strengths and weaknesses, and I'm curious if he suffers as much under the new driving physics as I do. Yeah, that's true. It'd be classed as a unapproved extension on my property. For anyone watching back on replay, because I know it's just the two of us right now, who doesn't get some of the reference there, Germany is a country where you have to have a license to play golf. I wish I was making that up. But my boss plays a lot of golf, and he had to take a test and get a license to play golf. I wore my Rosenborg shirt because it's nice and light and I thought it'd help with the temperature, but it really isn't. It's time for the aircon. I bought a portable aircon, that's how desperate things have become.
Well done, good finish. You stepped up and achieved what we asked. Good job.
Oh, that took it out of me.
It's been my privilege over the years to witness a number of great sporting events, and here's another
Whoop whoop.
to add to that.
That's the sound of the police.
Ultimate dream for any racing driver. We have a new Formula 2 world champion. So as they climb out of the car, the ART team are ready and waiting to celebrate a thoroughly deserved win.
It was a deserved win as well.
Was it everything you hoped for?
Everything and more. He had it all. The rival, the tension, the excitement. These two drivers and we love.
Right, let's see what Captain Dickhead says in the closing thing now, because I did what he told me to do, right? He was like, you know, push, don't always fight clean, just go for the win. I wonder if he's resentful or whether he's actually got some principles.
The accolade goes to his rival and the new Formula 2 champion.
I wonder if my odd teammate is still happy.
That result also seals the Formula 2 World Championship title. Congratulations to our winner, after an incredible season. Now then, Davide Valsecchi, who would you say was your driver of the day?
Today, I think I'll give it to the Trident driver. They pushed and found some fantastic performance. It was a pleasure to watch.
And it's total victory for the Trident team as they become the team champions. This is an act that will be hard to follow. And
nice work, boys.
Excitement, I think it's time for a lie down. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you when Formula 2 returns.
Alright, let's see what Robot Lee Mackenzie has to say as well.
First of all, congratulations. You must be thrilled.
Thanks.
Wow, you're the driver's champion. How does it feel? So that was a thrilling end to the season. How was the race for you? Well, we've been hearing rumours of a possible future for you in Formula One. Care to comment?
I'd love the opportunity, which I would.
Great.
I'd be shit, but I would. Do we get any more animatronics? The loading times seem a little bit longer than they did in the last game. That's another observation. But, you know, not unforgivably slow. Yeah, I'd be memed to death, mate.
Congratulations, mate. F2 champion.
Hey, congratulations. Enjoy it, 'cause it's the last time it'll ever happen.
Devin, it's okay to be upset. You came very close.
Yeah, we know things would have turned out very differently if I didn't get slapped with that ridiculous penalty.
What is it with you and complaining?
Look, somehow you managed to do a lot of things right today. It's great. You needed the win, I didn't. For me, this was always just a stepping stone to where. You two, you got your work out for you now that I'm gone. So you're gonna have to prove to everyone it was all just luck that got you.
Sure. Winning one race is luck. Winning the championship is talent.
Really? Next time we use that incredible talent to ram into someone and steal all their points, remember they won't be as forgiving as that. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Run. Things to sign, important paperwork, and all. I'm sure you understand. Ciao.
Toodles.
So, this big win, you're going to be getting a lot of interest. All I can say is choose wisely, or else you might end up with someone like Devin as your teammate. Come on, let's go celebrate.
Two months later. At least your agent's upgraded and got an office now. Let's see who's interested.
Ah, welcome. Come on in. Take a seat. It's time we had the big conversation about your next move. Your performance at the F2 Championships last year got you a lot of attention from the Formula One teams. Some of it more positive than others. I'm not so concerned with who does or doesn't like you. You'll have plenty of time to when the doubt is over. But I am concerned with our choices. They're narrowing as we haven't shown commitment to anyone. As your agent, my advice is to make your decision now. We can worry about comfort and fine points further down the line. I need you to review these. You've earned every single one of these proposals. So take your time, have a read through, and don't get too hung up on specifics.
I've already picked. In my mind, I've already picked. Yeah, you're right, they're all interested. That is so stupid. That is really stupid. Right, what's interesting is my value to the team score is variable already. So it seems that because I picked sportsman options, the showmanship teams don't like me. Now that's unfortunate because I have made a commitment in my mind to start with Williams and try and have a Williams McLaren all-British career, at least for a few seasons. I love Alfa Romeo as well, and maybe things change as the seasons go on, but I've already decided in my heart that I was going to sign for Williams, so fuck it, let's do that. And true, RB and Merc are British teams as well, even though they race under different flags. That is completely true. I can't alter my contract terms, so I just have to accept it, apparently. But that's fine. Hopefully it puts me with Russell and not fucking Kubica.
Excellent choice. From my conversations with them, they're going to be very excited to pursue this opportunity with you. I'll let them know our intentions immediately. I'll have to clean up some final details with them, but
You're mean.
other than that, congratulations. You've earned it.
That's true. To be honest, it might be worth it just to see that. I mean, if you have a joke, it has to come out. It has to. I think it's unhealthy to bottle up sarcasm and humour. Get a brain tumour or something. Right then, I'm going to call the stream for now. I need to go and have an ice cream and a cold shower and freshen myself up. And then, all going well, I should be back. Thanks for joining, mate. It was very good to have someone keep me company on stream. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you later if you're about. Bye, Z's.